Good morning, committee. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to ask if there's any requests for bill introductions. And committee, I do have two, and I got to tell you, the teachers are going to love this in the state of Kansas. One of them is a bill request that there is a requirement for reimbursement for supplies, school supplies to teachers, so they will not be paying out of pocket. Senator Baumgardner.
Is that a motion?
It is a request for a bill introduction, and I have a feeling you will support this wholeheartedly.
I will absolutely support that. And quite frankly, what bothers me continuously is we have school districts that have unencumbered funds. They should be allowing those teachers to use those funds to provide the supplies that are needed for the classroom. So I absolutely support that request. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I have several friends and family who are teachers, and I hear this often, and I've decided let's do something about it. So is there any objection to the bill request? Any questions? Seeing none, we'll make the request. The second one, I have a feeling the teachers will also love. We have attempted this in the past, and we were able to pass that it is a goal of 65% of the money to get to the classroom and the teachers. I am going to attempt, we're going to put a bill in again to make it a mandate that 65% of the K through 12 funding get to the classroom and the teachers. Any questions on the bill request? Senator Solentrop.
I guess we'll need to, thank you, Madam Chair. I guess we'll need to wait to see the actual bill itself, but is it 65% of the ending formulated total, or is it 65% of the base state aid, or where does that start and stop? So again, you don't have to answer me today. It's just I think that we'll have to drill down, make sure that it's appropriate, and yes, I'm in full agreement.
Thank you, Senator Solentrop. We're deleting the word goal in the current statute and making it a mandate.
Okay,
thank you. Any other questions or seeing none, we'll make the bill. Any objection to the bill request? Seeing none, we'll make the request. Are there any other requests for bills introduction? Thank you, committee. We'll move on. Our first item in the agenda is the budget hearing for the Department of Revenue. And we will start with Dylan. Absolutely 30 seconds, and I'll use that time to thank you, Dylan, for all of your work on the budget and for handing these out in advance. It allowed us the opportunity to go through. There are going to be many questions today, Mr. Secretary. And if you left them in your office, we can make a black and white copy for you. Do you need a copy? Yeah. Okay.
Thanks for the indulgence. I appreciate that. Eddie Penner is running downstairs to grab a couple of extra copies from my office. So he'll be bringing those up right now in case, who does, just to clarify, who has their copies? So he should have enough that he's bringing up. So we are definitely printing those downstairs right now. All right. Moving the Department of Revenue budget, I will start on page 4. So on page 4, you see a table that's going to show state general fund expenditures. And so the state general fund expenditures are trending slightly downwards, but they're averaging about $15.1 million per year, or between 2014 and 2020, but relatively flat. I did want to draw your attention to pages 5 and 6. I know you don't have those, not everyone has those before them, but the Division of Vehicles Operating Fund, revenue and expenditures on that are trending very slightly upward, between 48.6 up to 51 million between 19 and the 23 GovRec. But you can definitely see in the yellow line that balance is falling down to $78 in FY 2023. So these are substantial reductions in the total budget for the Department of Revenue. Senator, with permission of the chair.
Yes.
Senator Kirshen, you should have the Department of Revenue budget that was passed out yesterday, but if you don't have it before you, we're bringing up additional copies. All right.
Thank you, Darlin. What we could do, and if we wait until those copies are here, I actually have a couple of questions for the secretary that has nothing to do with budget, so
That
if
would
you
be
don't
ideal.
mind, I
Thank you.
would use the time for that. Mr. Secretary, do you mind? Committee, if you would look, you have a handout in front of you. It's the Kansas Retailer Sales Tax. This issue has come up for several years on, in fact, we had a bill amendment last year, and we were told by the department or agency that we did not need it because we have businesses that are paying estimates in sales tax, not actual amounts on sales tax. And it became a major issue during COVID when they had no sales and they were still anticipated to pay estimates. So we talked to the department or agency, we asked them, we found out that statutes did not need to be changed. The form needed to be changed. The form did not match statute. It was incorrect. And to my disappointment, the word estimate was moved and accelerated was put in on the form. So thank you, Mr. Secretary, for coming today. Could you please address this? Because this is a major issue. It doesn't match statute.
Senator, I actually looked at that for the first time a couple minutes ago myself, which is fine. But I remember the discussions last year, and it seemed like last year a lot of the discussion dealt with this prepayment concept, and I think the forms were changed to reflect the fact that it wasn't a prepayment, it was just an accelerated payment, which in fact was some of the original language when that provision was put on the books many years ago. So this whole estimated issue, I might have one of our experts who worked on this speak to that if I could.
That would be great, Mr. Secretary. And I reached out to your office last night to give you guys a heads up on this.
Okay.
So I'm sorry if you didn't get the message. I apologize.
That's fine.
And thank you for being here today.
And I guess my sense is if there's something amiss with this that is not
There's
consistent with
major amiss.
statute, then we will
Okay.
certainly correct that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I appreciate that. Kathleen, would you like to address?
Madam Chair and members of the committee, Kathleen Smith with the Department of Revenue. I would be interested in what your ideas are because I think we were trying to follow the statute that was provided. And if it's not correct, we want to make sure that it is correct. So if there is a problem.
It is my understanding that it's actual payment of sales. The sales tax is what they actually sold. It should be paid on actual, not on estimated or accelerated.
Correct. And if we look at line 4, we're saying that you're going to pay, enter the amount of the tax due for the first 15 days of the current calendar month. They have already made those sales and collected those sales, and they will report those sales on an accelerated frequency.
There seems to be some confusion. I've had several constituents and a couple of senators very disgruntled and upset about this form. Okay. So I do not understand why the word accelerated is still in it. It is misleading. And if we need to pass a statute to clean it up, we will.
Madam Chair, I don't think that the statute uses a specific word, and we thought that the accelerated, that term was a little bit better than the prepayment or prepaid.
So Kathleen, in your opinion, are accelerated and prepaid the same terminology?
I could probably think of them a little bit differently. Accelerated just means to me that you're going to pay it a little bit quicker than maybe someone else, but you've already collected the tax from the consumers.
That's not how they're reading it.
Okay.
And that's not the impression that they've got when they called the agency.
Okay. Well, then that's a problem.
It is. So, committee, I want this to be to your attention. Senator Baumgardner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I see on the bottom of the document that it was revised in December of '21. So has this been implemented since December with the new language?
It is in production, Senator. Yes, it is available to our retailers, correct?
And the retailers, if I may, Madam Chair, include our restaurants, correct?
Absolutely, yes.
So I guess I'm a little curious, did the department work with the Restaurant Association or any other retailer associations when we know that we heard specifically from them about this, not just 1 year, but 2 years since COVID struck?
Madam Chair, I apologize. I didn't know that we were getting specific responses from the Restaurant Association, so no, we did not work with them.
Thank you, Senator Baumgardner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It just seems since that was a topic that they specifically brought up as an issue, relevant. I guess it was an issue exacerbated by COVID would be most appropriate. But when we make a major change like this, I would assume that the Restaurant Association represents a very large group that's impacted by this. So it does seem to me, if we're making a significant change, that we would reach out to some groups to make sure that they could also help spread the word so that the process would be successful.
Well, thank you, Senator Baumgardner. I appreciate the comments. We didn't think that we needed that. We thought that the word prepaid was going to be deleted and that would be the end of it. But instead, the word was substituted with accelerated. And that is, therein lies the ambiguity or interpretation of the form, not so much the statute. So retailers, you do not have to pay in advance. You do not have to pay estimated. You pay actual according to the statute.
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kathleen. I'm hoping we can change the form. Would you guys take a look at it and then let us know what you plan to?
Yes, Madam Chair. What we need to try and do is we've got several different filing status terms, so we need to determine what this particular group is going to be called. So we need to figure out these people that are paying this way, what kind of a term are we going to give them? They were called the prepaid, now they're called the accelerated. So, I mean, we've got quarterly, we've got monthly, so we've got annual, and then we've got these prepaid or these accelerated now. So we just need to figure out a term that will identify them for purposes of our publications.
We'll be glad to work with you on that. Thank you so much. Appreciate your help on it and clarification. Okay, thank you, committee. We'll return to the budget. Dylan, thank you very much. And that was on me. I assumed the senators would bring the budget. So thank you very much.
Madam Chair, totally my fault. Should have brought extra copies. I would like to move immediately to page 5. So like I said, I wanted to bring your attention to some balance issues in Division of Vehicles Operating Fund. So you can definitely see some falling balances. That the line on the graph tells you what the ending balance in that fund is. This is more of just like I want to bring it to your attention, something to watch going forward as far as the balances in those funds are concerned. Something to keep an eye on the electronic databases fee fund, similar issues. So, you know, in the 19 actuals, you're looking at like 3.2 million, 3.5 million. In 21, you're dropping about 160,000, dropping to 25,000 in FY 2023. So there's just sort of some lower balances going forward, something to keep an eye on, maybe even in future years. I want to bring that to your attention. Looking at the FY 2022 analysis, starting on page 7. The legislature originally approved $107.7 million, all funds, $14.8 million from the state general fund. There was one adjustment to that approved budget subsequent to that, which is the reappropriation of $26,354 that was unspent in 21 and carried over to fiscal year 2022. So the agency request is 107.6, including 14.8 million SGF for 22. It's an all funds decrease of about $115,000 and an SGF decrease of 26,000 or 0.2% below the approved budget. The first item is an SGF swap. That's $26,000. That's the reason it's below the approved. Essentially, there was instructions from the State Finance Council that as federal funds became available to pay for some COVID-19 expenditures that were paid from the state general fund, they would use those federal funds, and then the authority was given to the governor just basically to swap out those expenditures where they were identified. There was $26,000 in like PPE equipment and stuff like that that was identified for this purpose. For the Special County Mineral Production Tax Fund, this is a pass-through for the agency, but they are deleting $968,450, and that's due to that reflects changes in the consensus estimates for oil and gas. So as that goes down, the transfer goes down. There's shrink adjustments. So the agency reduced the shrinkage allocation by $4.6 million, and that reduction was partially offset by the deleting of funding associated with those vacant positions in the agency's budget. All right. So what you end up with is a positive adjustment of $2.7 million. Okay, and so what happens is that some of those, the shrinkage allocation, and I hate to get into this, but particularly with the policy, in a policy committee, but shrinkage is basically a negative adjustment to salaries and wages. Okay, so they brought down some of that negative adjustment to salaries and wages, but they also deleted some of the vacant positions that were at vacant funded positions that were in there. And so the net effect is $2.7 million. Moving forward, on page 5 for computer programming, the agency reduced the estimate for the data center as a service based upon actual 2021 expenditures. For building space rental, there's a reduction of $387,400 due to the channel management moving out of the docking state office building, so relocating out of the docking state office building. For motor vehicles, the agency deleted $324,000 to revise the estimate for the amount paid to the contractor IDEMIA to produce and mail driver's licenses and ID cards. So that's just a contractual service. They're adjusting their assumptions for that. For vehicle license tag resale, the agency added $688,000 for sales of vehicle license tags. For passenger car, the agency deleted $235,000 for passenger vehicles. No vehicle purchases were actually planned for fiscal year 2022 in this budget. For channel management project, the agency deleted $287,999 for lower than anticipated cost to relocate that transport portion. So you mentioned that I mentioned earlier, they vacated the docking building, and the actual cost to do that relocation came in a little bit lower than anticipated. For travel, the agency added $444,000 in 22 as travel resumes post-pandemic. There were some deletions, particularly to the state general funded side of travel last year and the year before that in this budget. And so this is sort of bringing those back up as travel restrictions ease. And there's about $235,000 in other various small adjustments, other places in the budget. The governor is recommending 107.8, including 15.1 million SGF. It's an increase of 287 or 0.3% above. So there's one real adjustment, and that's the food sales tax administrative costs. So the governor is recommending adding $287,531 all SGF to the tax administration system. And that's used to modify its tax system to accommodate one rate for food and another rate for non-food items. And the required programming would be performed by existing staff. However, there is some anticipating that there would be some contract programmer services that would be required by the agency in order to be able to implement that food sales tax plan. So that's what's associated with the governor's recommendation. With that, I would stand for questions on the FY 2022 budget.
Thank you, Dylan. I have a question because on the back, so is she recommending 2 adjustments for 23? And I don't mean to jump ahead, but on page 26, she's got another adjustment. So is that in addition to?
So I believe this one's a little bit different. okay? So it is still food sales tax, okay? But one is ongoing operational costs with the anticipation that there would be some additional administrative overhead that's associated with having different rates for food and for other items. And it also has some additional FTE positions in it that is not in the 22 one. And the one in 22 is really purely about the sort of software and technical implementation portions of that plan.
So if I may, those were not included in her fiscal note, or in the fiscal note for her food sales tax bill.
I'd have to defer to the agency or even Eddie for upper, no, he's not sure either. So I defer to the agency on that issue. I didn't review that.
Okay.
That
Senator Baumgardner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, that was one of my questions, because I didn't recall that we saw anything as far as any type of operational cost. My question it has to do with travel. So when did they add the almost $500,000 for travel? And it's ironic that we indicate that it's post-pandemic, because that certainly isn't what we've been hearing from the governor's office, that we're post-pandemic. But when is that almost $500,000 added?
So that wouldn't be added until this budget is approved. So that would depend upon when the bill passes, because these would be current year adjustments to the budget.
Thank you. And Senator, I would save that question for the agency when they testify, but it is a good question. Did you have another one?
Nope, that's it.
Senator Steffen.
Thank you. Clear back page one, very top left-hand column. We have actual for fiscal year 2021. Can you refresh my memory on what the budgets were for 2021 from the agency and the governor?
So if you'd like a comparison between the approved for 21 and the actual expenditures for 21, I'd have to go pull that data for you. I can do that while you're here in the vote budget. It'll only take me a couple minutes.
Thank you. Committee, any other questions at this point? Thank you, Dylan.
All right, moving to FY 2023. On page 9, there's a little bit of analysis on the differences between 21 and 22, 21 actuals and 22, so there's a little bit of data on that. With the purple being the actuals and the green being the agency. On the FY 23 analysis, starting on page 10, so we're going to use FY 2022 agency estimate as the starting point. So the agency requests $106.9 million, including $14.8 million SGF. It's a decrease of $686,000, or 0.6%. It's an SGF increase of $490, or less than 0.1%. So the agency is deleting an additional $316,050 off from the Special County Mineral Production Tax Fund, and once again trying to reflect the consensus revenue estimate. The agency is deleting $250,000 off from special revenue funds for the estimated cost for contract counsel in anticipation of the resolution of the Bicknell litigation. Staffing and recruiting services IT, the agency is deleting $150,000 off of special revenue funds, and they're simply shifting support to the state employees. So the contract costs for IT go down. For information systems consulting IT, the agency deletes $70,000 for the anticipated completion of the channel management project. And once again, that's a contractual service consulting costs. And there's about $100,000 in various other smaller adjustments. Underneath the governor's recommendation, it's 108.6, 15.3 million SGF. It's an all funds increase of 1.7 million, or 1.6%, and an SGF increase of 525,000, or 3.4%. And there's a couple different items that are in here, but before I go into, actually, yeah, I'll cover it in 7, so that's good. So the first item is a taxpayer notification fund. So the governor recommends adding 1.2 million all from the state general fund all from the taxpayer notification cost fund that were inadvertently omitted from the budget. And the taxpayer notification fund costs will be used to reimburse printing and postage costs of counties to send out notices with revenue neutral rates beginning in tax year 22 and 23. And this is funded by an SGF transfer of about $1.2 million. So it's a special revenue fund expenditure, but it's funded by an SGF transfer, so it's fundamentally not different from an SGF expenditure. And the Division of Vehicles Modernization Fund transfer. So the governor recommends eliminating the $4 Division of Vehicles Modernization Fund surcharge on July 1st of 2022. And in order to accommodate that, they are transferring $1 million to the Division of Vehicles Modernization Surcharge Fund. Okay, in order that charge is not being made. And I believe we've already discussed, there's some food sales tax administrative costs, but the department indicates those 8 additional FTE positions are to provide customer service relations and business support to meet additional accounting needs associated with that bill. And so,
Go ahead.
that's it. And then there's no capital
Several
improvements.
questions. Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. On page 11, number 7, would that not take a change in statute to eliminate the $4 surcharge?
It would, I believe, and I'll double check, but it is in the appropriations bill, not as a permanent change in statute, but as a proviso. So you can suspend transfers or charges and stuff like that via proviso. You just can't do it permanently. There may be another policy bill that would accompany that as well, and I'll double check for you on that policy bill.
So,
Senator Peck.
Madam Chairman, thank you. If we do not have legislation, it's a one-time election year proviso.
And only the budget, in this case, it would only be the budget year, that's correct.
And one more.
Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And the $4 surcharge that's been placed, the money goes where?
So it goes to 3 different places. From the Division of Vehicles Modernization Charge, I think part of it goes to the Department of Administration, and part of it goes to like Highway Patrol. But I'll look those up while the agency is speaking.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Committee, any other questions? Senator Corson.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I just wanted to touch on something mentioned earlier. I went back and I'm looking at page 3 of the fiscal note for SB 342, and it does say the department indicates that the bill would require $287,531 from the state general fund in FY 2022 to implement the bill and to modify the automated tax system. The bill would require $525,864 from the state general fund in FY 2023 and in future fiscal years for the ongoing cost for the department to hire 8 new FTE positions to provide customer relations and business support and meet additional accounting and audit needs. So I think that the fiscal note did cover
Senator Corson.
what was in the budget, and I just wanted to get clarification on that because I do think it was covered.
I appreciate that, but that's not $10 million that the governor's requesting. Her request is $10 million. The numbers you read do not add up to $10 million.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Dylan, would you like to address that? No. Thank you. Understood. Committee, I know I do appreciate the question and the diligence looking, because I was also looking at the same data. Committee, any other questions? I do have a question on why would the agency omit $1.2 million for notifications? And does this have to do with the attempt to not send out notices again?
So I would actually turn that over to the agency to respond to that particular question. The only information I have is that at the time of the budget submission, it was an accidental omission. That was the information provided to me by the agency.
Thank you. This is part of my concern with the budgets. The legislature gets what's presented, and committee, I know I've mentioned this before, but I literally was in a meeting and it wasn't the Department of Revenue, it was another agency department. They asked for 2 sets of books, one to go for the legislature and one to do their business. And that's what we're dealing with as a legislature at times. Committee, any other questions for Dylan?
Yeah, I just want to draw the attention of the committee to the fact that there's some additional performance measures on each program. This would be your opportunity, after you review those performance measures, to indicate whether or not those are the performance measures you need to evaluate the budgets for this particular agency. And so I know we're short for time, so I won't touch on them now, but.
No, I appreciate it, Dylan. We may need to expend, we can actually use the time today and continue the hearing for the budget tomorrow. So if you would like to,
Sure.
I think that would be best use of time, because tomorrow we are working the budget.
All right, so I'm going to pass over the administration program. and move immediately to the alcoholic beverage control program, starting on page 18. Well, I'll start on page 17, just to provide you a quick overview. So if you look at any one of these program analyses, you're going to sort of see from FY 2014 through FY 2023 GovRec, the sort of trend of total expenditures. Inside the gray box, you're going to see the statutory basis for that program. So what statutes require them to do that. And then these are the identified by the agency goals for that particular program inside of each one of those bullets. You're going to have a little bit of background information. And in the next page, you're going to have their performance measures. So, and then some financing data on the bottom as well. So one I'd like to bring your attention to is the 3-year average for the number of controlled buys by alcoholic beverage control is 358. The actuals in 20 are 404, and they're targeting 612. So what you're seeing there for this agency is a substantial attempt to increase the number of controlled buys. But if you look at compliance rate for sale of alcoholic beverages to underage persons, averaging 85.3% and staying right around that target of 85% compliance on that point. And then you see the ABC regulation cost per license. This is a really good measure. Anytime that you can see where someone has identified the cost per license issued, that becomes a cost-benefit analysis measure so that you can see what the cost to a licensee is to run one particular program. So you're averaging 515. The target for 22 is 561. So you're definitely seeing that the costs per licensee are going up. That could be tied either to the number of licensees going down, okay, or the cost for the agency going up. But it's not clear entirely what, but that's something you need to pay attention to. And then there's some additional tax enforcement violation data. Moving forward on the motor vehicle program, starting on page 20, you can see that we didn't include the 3-year averages because we didn't have 3 years worth of data, but it's about 31, 35, going to a target of 32.9 on online renewals. And then once again, this cost per registered vehicle for the operations of this program, it's averaged 401. Target in 22 is 418. We don't have a target for 23 yet. The cost per active credential, so think of that as his driver's license, whatever, sort of like a credential is issued, is averaging $9.96, targeting $10.43. So you definitely are seeing a trend upward in that cost per active license. Which is going on. And once again, the number of credentials is probably not going down, so it's likely as a result of expenditures. Property valuation, there's some data there, but a lot of it's more or less flat. And tax administration on page 24, just wanted to bring your attention to a couple items. Delinquent tax collections in millions, averaging 187.8, targeting 210 for 22 and 23. So there's definitely an attempt to increase the number of delinquent tax collections. And if you look at the delinquent tax accounts receivable turnover ratio for those accounts, it's averaging 0.51, targeting 0.75. Actual in 21 was 0.78. So there definitely appears to have been some additional effort to turn over those accounts on a faster basis for that agency. Anything that is marked with an asterisk means that is a measure that has not been identified by the agency or by the governor as a measure, but was submitted to the Legislative Research Department as part of the performance measuring guide over the summer. And so we've gone ahead and included those for your purposes here. And once again, like I was saying, if these measures don't fit your needs or you're looking for a different sort of measure, now would be a good time, or tomorrow, or at any point, frankly, before next year, to indicate to the agency what other types of measures that you're looking for in order to be able to evaluate their budget.
So thank you, Dylan. I know you are passing on information that you received from the agency. It is a good attempt. This does not provide one of the items that it stands out to me. It's also supposed to source the funding mechanisms for these programs. It's not included in any of these items.
All right.
So thank you. Committee, any questions? Senator Baumgardner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One quick question on page 20. I understand that the governor's office doesn't utilize the measure as far as the number of licenses and ID cards processed. Are we to assume, though, that the actual for fiscal year 2021 was the
Was the exact 700,000? That seems improbable.
It does seem improbable.
Yeah, it was probably an estimate that got carried over in some of the data. It's probably a data error. So I'll just have to take a look at that.
Thank you, Doug.
I did not mention the average wait time. That's also another good measure that's on that particular page.
Thank you, committee. I do have some questions on some of the other measures, but I know they're not for you because you're just passing on the information. So very much appreciated.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Dial-In Committee? Thank you for your work on this. Next conferee would be Mr. Oh, okay. The Secretary would like to defer. Oh, Chris Holm. Okay, thank you. Welcome.
Good morning, Madam Chair. My name is Chris Holm. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for the Department of Revenue, and I have provided some testimony that you should have received yesterday that kind of outlines our budget overview. A lot of what Dylan said, it's really a supplement to what he has provided you, and it just is further explanation on some of the different funding sources that we have. Also, what our approved budget was, what the governor's budget recommendation was, and then some of the reasons for the difference. I won't read through the whole thing, but I've listed in there, and I can address some of the questions that you had about the taxpayer notification fund. That was an oversight on my part. I saw that it went into effect in tax year 2022, which would have been fiscal 23, and it's just a pass through from the state general fund into our, whatever the counties reimburse is what we would pay out, or whatever they request for reimbursement is what we would pay out. So the 1 million cost was an assumption that we made, but it may not occur at all. It does count as an expenditure in our budget, but I just inadvertently omitted it.
Inadvertently? Okay. From last year?
Yes.
Understandable, but that's a big chunk of change, and it just makes us question as to how accurate these budgets are, especially when something like this comes across. Committee, any questions? Senator Calais.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is for the Secretary.
Senator, I think, okay, we'll go ahead.
Thank you.
We'll allow the indulgence. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate that we kicked off this meeting righting some wrongs. I think it's important that we do that through the budget process. We do have the power of the purse. Mr. Secretary, while we do have the power of the purse, you do not have the statutory authority to tax streaming services. The governor attempted a tax on streaming services, and it failed in this legislature. The streamlined sales tax defines streaming services separately from television and digital satellite services. You sent a $23 million bill to Netflix. You're breaking the law. And I would like to have your commitment right now that you will stop today.
And I really cannot get into the details of what the department does with specific taxpayers. That is confidential information.
So, Mr. Secretary, what I would like then, I appreciate the senator bringing this up, and what we will do, I know you can't talk about an individual, but we do need this addressed. And if you need until tomorrow, we will give you the day, but this must be addressed in front of this committee.
The fact is, the department does not tax streaming services per se. We have a statute that specifically taxes television subscription services. And the legal issue, what does Netflix sell?
Senator?
Mr. Secretary, this is an egregious abuse of power. An egregious abuse of power. And you can come to that conclusion on your own, or you can have us address it through this budget process. But I can commit to you today that You will not recognize your agency when I'm done with it if you continue on this course. This is not the first time. In fact, this is a trend with this department. When you attempted to tax entities and behaviors for out-of-state retailers before you had the statutory authority to do it, and now you're doing it to a streaming service that is clearly defined, and you do not have the authority to do this. And we will make that clear to you through this process if that's what it takes. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator, thank you. Mr. Secretary, would you like to respond? And if you would come back tomorrow, that would be great.
Certainly.
We'll continue, Mr. Holmes. Oh, I'm sorry. We'll bring him back. Okay. Mr. Secretary, would you stand for another question? Senator Solentrop.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On page 10, Contract Counsel deleting $250,000 from the budget in anticipation of the resolution of the Bicknell litigation. What can you tell us about the settlement dollar amount?
The Bicknell case is still pending before the Kansas Supreme Court. We're awaiting a decision there, but we are close to the end of the line in that case. Therefore, attorney's fees that had been budgeted will not be necessary going forward. So that's why those fees are being taken out. But we honestly, we are expecting a decision from the Supreme Court.
Senator Solentrop, thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may ask, what's the maximum exposure that we have in the settlement?
If the court were to rule against the state, the tax amount plus interest would be in the range of $65 million.
I'm sorry?
$65 million.
Senator Solentrop, I'm glad that you brought this up. In fact, I would like a breakdown of all of the persons that are owed, and we're paying interest on it as a state because the state has chosen to challenge that. So if we could get that financial breakdown, if you could bring that tomorrow also.
And I'm not sure exactly what the request is.
So that is not the only case that the state is refusing to pay. There are other individuals that have challenged the state, and the state owes them money. And for some reason, the state is not paying that money, and so it is accruing interest. And that is a cost to taxpayers.
So essentially you want, and again, we can't give specific taxpayer
Not the individuals, we
information.
want the breakdown.
So any taxpayer who has filed an appeal challenging the denial of a refund.
No, the ones that have gone to court, the major ones, there are, as my understanding, there's more than one out there. So, Senator Solentrop.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just as you specified, this one's $65 million, and we have a good idea of what the original claim was. So from the original claim to the settlement dollar amount of $65 million, there's been an interest rate applied. Is that not correct?
That is correct.
Okay. That's the generalities that we're looking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. That is what I'm looking for, the interest and the expenses for carrying those and not paying them as the court ordered.
The Bicknell case is a little different in that the case is actually an assessment against the Bicknells. What makes it have this exposure is that the amount was paid by the taxpayer to basically put themselves in a posture if they did prevail, they would get a refund of that plus interest. So most taxpayers don't do that. If there's an assessment, they just appeal it and they don't pay it, hoping that they'll prevail and then get interest. So this case, it's large, but it is a little unique.
If you would bring that information tomorrow also, Mr. Secretary.
Certainly.
Thank you. Committee, any other questions for the Secretary? Seeing none. We'll continue with the budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In response to Senator Baumgartner's question a little bit ago about the travel, what that was is it's a restoration of the travel that was completely deleted out of the budget as part of the reduced resource package that we accepted last fiscal year. And so basically it's all of it was deleted and so to zero. And so we were just restoring because our travel has started back up again to do audits and things like that.
Senator Baumgartner.
Thank you, Madam Chair, but I think we're 8 months into the fiscal year, aren't we?
Right.
So did we need to restore all of it? Or have we used 60% of it already when you restored it?
I'm going to have to go back and look at that for sure. I believe it's somewhere around, I don't know. I don't want to tell you the wrong thing. So let me go back and check and I'll bring it back tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Committee, we are out of time. Are there any other questions for the department so that we can have them prepared for tomorrow? Committee, we're going to continue the hearing on tomorrow. We have BODA. I am going to schedule a meeting for Friday so that we can give this the diligence that it needs. Are there any other questions or business? Yes, Eddie, would you please? Eddie has a handout for the committee. It is a draft sample letter of revenue neutral rates that could go out this year. So I would really like the committee to take a look at that and see. I appreciate the department. Thank you for your diligence and your work. And we look forward to continuing the budget tomorrow. Committee, with no other business before us, we're adjourned. Thank you for your work.